listeners, and welcome to A Geek Tragedy. I am Stephen, known online as Plague Mantle for various reasons, and I'm your host, and looking distinctly unchristmassy today. I do apologise, but I would like to welcome to the pod the most erudite human and my best friend, Holly Properly. Hello, Holly.
Hello. I'm alright, how are you? Well, I can't ask you that yet. We've got a lot of questions left to go. Normally, I'm pretty good at not doing that.
You know the system. I mean, it's on the cue sheet in big bold letters for me. Yes, Mark, shut the fuck up. It's your turn.
I know, and I've never done that before, and yet here we are.
Okay, Holly has now said hello and expanded on her well-being, so I will add to that. And of course, our very own salvage man and crafter par excellence, Mr. Mark Godry. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Dun, 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 dun. I'm very well, thank you very much. I'm enjoying time in the workshop doing stuff. My hands were rainbow-coloured earlier, but I've cleaned them up just for our viewers, so that I've got nice, clean, delicate lady hands.
I'm sure they're pleased.
And an artist, size of an elephant.
What?
It's from the Banana Splits.
Is it from Ice Station Zebra again?
No, it's not. And I still blame Stephen for that.
Yeah,
he did not specify that it was going to be a quiz. Otherwise, I'd have chosen different films.
Oh, it was fun, though.
No.
And of course, behind the scenes, our producer and long-suffering Kit, who shall be named Muzzle-Loading Musket.
Muzz for short.
Muzz, good old Muzzers.
Oh, we love Muzzers.
I look forward to Kit putting up a picture of Kit with a musket now in the actual.
Yeah.
Mark reads script. Bold lettering. Ask Stephen how he is now. Stephen, how are you?
Let me see what I respond.
Mark has established himself as the Stephen askerer. Now Mark asks me how I am.
Fellow listeners, this is what we have to contend with behind.
This is the behind the scenes. I'm all right. It's been an awful couple of days, but I'm all right. I mean, just awful in that, like, everything is broken. I'm on my laptop. My PC is broken. My washing machine is flooding the kitchen. My garden fence has fallen down. It's been one of those days, you know. But I'm all right. I'm still going.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
No, that comes later on this month when we do the 12 days of Christmas.
Righty-ho.
And a fence in the neighbour's garden.
Yeah. And on AGT, or amorous ganglion tickler today. I should be amorous ganglion tickler.
No, too many syllables. No, it's too much.
And that ganglion just does not trip off the tongue.
Well, it's not supposed to. You're tickling it, not...
No.
Well, I suppose you could tickle it with your tongue, I suppose.
Holly looks particularly confused and disturbed.
I am, because while you were doing all of that, the cat was scratching the underside of my chair, and it was very much like...
Do you keep your ganglion there?
I don't keep my ganglion there, no. I'm very...
We are really... We're just tangenting everywhere today.
We absolutely are.
So, on an asphalt ginger tinsel this week, we wish you a merry December the 9th, everyone. Or, in fact, happy whatever day it happens to be that you are listening to this podcast on, because, you know, might not be the same day. It is that time of year that many people celebrate the birth of their saviour in the form of Michael Dorn, who was born today in 1952 and taught us all the concept of Klingon honour and how not to raise your son. That is my own reference to the On This Day segment we're doing shortly.
And in the traditional Klingon greeting, Nanu Nanu.
Kapla, indeed. Although you couldn't see that Mark was doing the Vulcan hello.
Just to really mix it up.
Wow, that's cross-cultural.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, it's not. It's all in the same geek culture, really, isn't it?
No, but I mean, within the universe of Star Trek, it is cross-cultural.
Anyway, shh, Stephen's about to speak.
I am. But here are the pods. We are celebrating our own personal life-changing pop culture moment, which we should probably have celebrated earlier this year, but we could not. That could not have been stated because the pod back then had not been created. So instead, we have. Everyone's looking at me strangely. We have waited all the way up until Christmas to celebrate the anniversary of our own personal Yolokaturin in the form of Dungeons and or Dragons. Yes.
What's one of those then?
Dungeons and Dragons was this role-playing game.
No, shush, Mark.
Yolocaturin, also called Yolocatur, which is my favourite fact today, which I found out earlier, is a huge and vicious cat from Icelandic Christmas folklore that is said to lurk in the snowy countryside during Christmas season and eats people who do not receive new clothing before Christmas Eve. Basically, it hangs around the snow and eats naked people.
Why are we celebrating our personal one of those?
I could tell our own personal Jesus, could I? So I had to pick a different random.
Sully eats my socks. Sometimes.
My favourite part, right, of this is that Yolocaturin is closely associated with other figures from Icelandic folklore, considered the pet of the ogress Grilla and her sons, who have a pop band name. They're called the Yule Lads.
Oh yeah, I know the Yule Lads. I had one of the little Christmas decorations of the Yule Lads. They're very ugly little gnome-like creatures. Great.
Yeah,
fun.
what a great name.
Yeah, it's good. I like that. Yeah.
There you go, mischievous pranksters. So there you go. That's to our own personal whatever it is. So over the course of this, and maybe next pod, who knows, with us, we'll take a quick quiz at why D&D exists, what it means to us, some of our formative moments within the game, and why it would be fucking awful if Elon Musk takes over Hasbro. And I mean, it couldn't get any worse before, but, it can.
Oh, seriously, well, it's about the only thing he's left to take over, really, isn't it? Anyway, enough politics.
Onwards then. Now that's what I call Geekmas. Tape 1, Side B, a D&D Geekmas. But first, let's turn to Mark and Holly at the On This Day desk. Holly,
Hello.
next way.
Yes, thank you. So, on this day, 4 weeks ago, we invented the On This Day special segment of the pod. This is the last time that we are going to refer to how long ago we created it, just because I don't want to do that anymore, and I'm here and I can, so I'm not doing it anymore. However, we do have a few rather interesting facts for you. So, Mark, would you like to kick off with your On This Day facts?
Well, on this day, December the 9th, as it is, fellow listeners.
On this day, on this day.
On this day, on this day, on this day.
We haven't got that jingle.
On this day. On this day, he says, leaning forward, reading the notes provided. In 1903, listeners, Norwegian Parliament votes unanimously for female suffrage. Hurrah!
Well done, Norwegian Parliament.
Well done. But there's a weird one here. 1907, first Christmas seals were sold. I'm guessing there's some sort of aquatic mammal thing.
Yeah, that's what I assumed.
Festive mammal.
You assumed it was a festive mammal.
I thought that.
Yeah.
What, rather than seals for sealing letters before stamps?
Festive mammals.
Christmas
Festive
seals
aquatic-based mammals.
for letters. For letters.
That sort of seal. That's what I'm assuming anyway. I mean, you could be right, Holly, but I'm sticking.
Oh, could I?
When we used to
Yes.
laugh and I said the door was guarded by powerful seals, it was always monsters in costume with guns.
Yeah. That's the way it
You're
works.
ridiculous,
Yeah.
both of you.
We do our best. Thank you very much.
Are those your two facts?
Those are my two facts. Well, unless you want a births fact.
Oh,
Would you
yes,
like a births
Oh,
fact?
go on, give us a birth.
Okay, well, this is a group joining in fact here, which I'm starting off in. 1916, Kirk Douglas, otherwise known as Spartacus. Who's Spartacus?
I'm
I'm
Spartacus.
No, I'm Spartacus.
No,
I'm
but I'm Spartacus, and so
We're
is my
all
cat.
Spartacus. So
We
he
just
was born
muskets.
on this day. On this day.
On this day, on this day, on this day,
On this day.
on
Yes.
this day, on this
Wednesday.
day.
Friday.
It's Tuesday.
Is it? I thought it was Monday.
It's Monday.
You'll go, Holly.
Perfect. Okay, so I will start with births and then move on to something else because I want to finish on a real high note for December the 9th on this day. In 1934, on this day, the illustrious, the wonderful, the magnificent Judi Dench was born. Dame Judy, we love you. She is obviously known for things like Henry V, Macbeth, antagonising David Tennant and Michael Sheen, and basically just being Judi fucking Dench.
The denture.
Yeah, she's
That makes it sound like teeth.
just phenomenal. And also just bringing it full circle back around to the birth of the incredible Michael Dawn. In 2340, on this day, so on this day, but in the future, on this day, a fictional Klingon character named Worf was born.
No,
Happy birthday in a couple of 100 years, Worf.
How do Klingons get born? Do they hatch out of eggs, or they
I don't want to think about
question
it.
for another day.
And finally, for the end of our on this day segment for this week, we're going to 2021, and I am taking. I can't even take this seriously. This is just fucking hilarious. I am taking you to the King Abdul Aziz Camel Festival Beauty Contest. Right. Just imagine that concept as you will.
Right there with you.
As you can, yep.
Lipstick and eyelashes.
And now I'm going to tell you that more than 40 camels were disqualified from this Camel Festival Beauty Contest because, fucking hell, the judges found evidence of Botox injections and other cosmetic enhancements. just
Those
let that sink
bulldog
in.
clips at the back of the necks are all giveaway as well.
Hump filler.
I bet they're the right hump.
Oh, I just can't. So anyway, that's our on this day segment featuring Spartacus, Judi Dench, Michael Dawn, and camels, and
On
Norway,
this day.
and some seals, ambiguous seals that can't decide if they're mammals or stamps. Mammals or stamps? Mammals or
Mammals or
stamps?
stamps?
We're not playing a game called Mammals and Stamps.
Mammals or stamps.
We could. Let's tangent the fuck off and just...
It's like last week's turnips or toupees.
Well, we know the name of the episode, and perhaps back on Aries t-shirt for future days. Let's play Mammals and Stamps, or Stamps. Right. So that's the end of that for today. More silliness next week, no doubt. But before we get into D&D and the inspirational part, because we do want to talk to each other about kind of how we got into our role-playing chops, what we took away from it, etc., etc. I am going to continue the Christmas theme of December month and do a fact-finding quiz kind of game that I will supplement with some knowledge as we go through. Last week, Holly was our outstanding winner of the quiz, the Christmas quiz, and they have a beautiful collection of gonks to show for it. That they are hiding in a.
They're currently in a little
They've gone to watch a camel beauty show somewhere.
No, they're being part of my daily Instagram advent calendar opening. So they're in a tiny little gonk wonderland at the moment. But I will send pictures to Kit so that Kit can insert the pictures around the place.
Well, the big question then is, can Mark win himself a Christmas prize?
Probably. I have not had time to prepare.
I don't know. You were there at the start. You know, you might have more idea. Will Holly get more useless gum for their flat, or will it be a dead? These and other pointless questions will be answered in the next few minutes. So at home, grab your pencils and paper and see what kind of score you can come out with in the quiz. A quiz I like to call Don Quixote and the 5 windmills made of the bones of the template of a moose trifle. You right there, Beans?
I'm just very confused.
Good, because the rules are also simple and chaotic.
Okay.
I will ask questions and my contestants can buzz in at any time by making their specific noise. Mark will go a woogity woo wang diddly bang bang.
No, I won't.
Then no points for you. And Holly, you will go beep beep squiggle.
Beep beep squiggle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, do you want to test your buzzer, or are you alright?
I'm fine. Mine doesn't work. I'm pressing it, nothing's happening.
Mark may or may not join in. We'll find out. So that's the quick test over. I will ask a bunch of questions about D&D, and we'll see how well we know. Well, this is basically about the early history. So, questions for D&D quiz. For 1 point, when was it released?
Swing dang diggly dim dim boo boo bow wada ba da ba da bow.
Objection! That's not his buzzer noise.
Can you give me the month as well?
Oh, it's between January and December somewhere, I think.
You're probably right, but can you tell me which of those months it was?
Oh, wild stab in the dark, I'd say June.
That is incorrect. Holly, do you have an actual answer?
Beep.
For 1,000 points, I said before, I meant to point this out earlier. If you try get it wrong, and then the other person gets it right, you get 1,000 whole points. So when Holly gets one wrong and you get it right, you get 1,000 points too.
Beep, beep, squiggle.
Yes.
January.
Is that because I gave the clue away at the start by saying the fact that it hadn't been released until before the pod was created?
I
you didn't know any idea.
missed that bit entirely, but okay. Am I right then?
Yeah, it's indeed January. Clever stuff.
That's nice.
And it is indeed 1974.
You what I did was 1974. I needed the date, the year, and the month. Okay, let's see if we can get some points back then. Question 2, what was the miniatures war game that Gary Gygax began the D&D game within in the early 70s for 3 points?
It was... is it Chivalry? No, it's Chainmail.
That is correct for 3 points. Look at that. Love it. Chainmail, yes, it was a game written by Jeff Perrin. One of his mates, Gygax, expanded it and gained the interest of Guidon Games, who hired Gygax, although Guidon only lasted about 3 years before it collapsed, with Chainmail being its only big product. And we'll go into more detail about why it collapsed in a minute. Bonus points, and with a caveat clue, this question throws back to our November comic book references. In Chainmail Fantasy Supplement that Gary Gygax created, there were titles of levels given to the units for advancements. There are 2 of them. So, like, basically, a soldier would become a veteran or whatever, but they weren't veterans, but they were based around the comic book ideology. There were 2 of them. 3 points for each name. Do you know what they were?
Strangers in the night.
That's incorrect.
Not a fucking clue.
Really?
Not even going to hesitate to say no.
Based on it's your question because you got the first one right. It's based on comic books.
Is it? Oh, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man and the Hulk.
Nope, that is incorrect. They did not level their characters up to be... I am a soldier, but I have leveled up now. I am now the Fantastic Four. What, just one of you? Shut up.
One of me.
Get him, Ben.
Go for it, Rick.
Ollie, do you know what it is? Based on comic books. Mark is along the right theme in the style of person that he's chosen, but not...
Superhero?
Superhero is indeed one of the 2 titles. Can you guess what the other one is?
Vigilante?
Nope, it's hero and superhero. Those were the 2 levels past basic you could get to. You could become a hero magic user and a superhero magic user for no particularly good reason.
Okay. I think hero and vigilante would have been
better.
better.
I don't know why you chose that. I'd like to kind of pretend that I did, but I don't. Question 4. Can you name D&D's co-creator for a point?
Gary and some other bloke.
Sully, do you know?
No, I can't remember.
Beans?
I asked Sully. Sully has no idea.
I was Dave Arneson.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that for next time.
Who met Gygax at Gen Con in 1969, which Gygax coincidentally founded, and they worked on more games together there on in. I didn't actually know that Gygax had founded Gen Con until I was doing my research. There you go. Okay, this is a bit of a tricky one. Arneson went on to draw inspiration from Chainmail and a few other games to write his own game that would become the first D&D campaign setting, like Ravenloft or Forgotten Realms. What was it called for 3 points? Silence going on here.
Yep.
I don't know.
No.
It was called Blackmore,
Yeah.
which
Richie.
brought into the concept that stories would eventually be consistent rather than just doing little adventures and then coming home like you do in Warhammer Quest or whatever. The same characters played through consecutive stories, the beginning of like campaigns and that kind of thing. There you go. Also meant that hit points and leveling became a thing properly for characters. And then into questions, so is that the next one along. In 1972, Dave McGarry, who played Blackmore, came out with a board game called Dungeon! Which Gary Gygax played and thought, you know what, I think role-playing might be something that sweaty nerds might start doing en masse. So he wrote his own game, which became the D&D second big setting. Do you know what that one was called?
Beep beep squiggle.
Do surprise me, Beans?
Is it called oh
No, it's not called Oh.
oh no grey
How are you?
something grey hawk.
Yes, it is called Greyhawk. That is correct. It is the game which Gygax originally based on the real world, which he named Earth, in a clever twist on the word Earth. He put an O at the front. And
Ooh.
would you believe it had a suspiciously rebranded map of Earth?
I would believe that. Having seen said map.
Okay, easy question. Guidon Games told him to take a hike on his D&D game, which is probably why they went under, so he had to make his own company to publish stuff. What was it called?
Ding dong boo, googly 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 googly.
Watcha gingangu.
Would that be
Mark, what was it
TSR?
called? It was called TSR. Bonus points. Can you tell me what that stands for?
Tactical simulation.
Oh, not quite. Like reading a book and learning things.
Tactical
Glasses on.
study.
Right. Yeah.
No.
The thing that makes the game work.
Rules.
Yes, correct. How did you get that?
I don't know. It just popped out of my mind out of nowhere. I didn't have a single bit of help there.
I thought
One
it stood.
single bit.
I thought it stood for totally suspicious rhinoceroses.
Oh, that was later.
It should. Sorry, I'm just gonna shift a little bit. There we go, so that you don't fall.
So, as discussed, D&D is then released in 1974 in a wood-coloured box, but the first edition is named the what-coloured box?
Red.
Incorrect. It was not red, the first one. Holly,
Oh.
do you know it?
What other? Can I have multiple choice?
Yes, it's not red. It's one of the other colours.
Well, that's black. That one's. But you're pointing at a white thing.
White? Is that your answer?
I don't know. I'm so confused. This is chaos. Where have all the rules gone? Sure, I'll say white.
That is correct. It was indeed the white box. It was the very first version of D&D.
Like the album.
Like the album. But it was, in fact, a wooden-coloured box that first came out. Random question. I don't know if you'll know this, but I was going to tell the listeners anyway. But do you know what the names of the first 3 books inside the box were called? Because it wasn't called the DM's Guide and stuff. It had completely different names.
Nope.
Absolutely.
They were called Men and Magic, Monsters and Treasure, and the Underworld and Wilderness Adventures book.
Snappy.
Cool.
Yeah, it really trips off the tongue, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
It does.
Have you got my men and magic?
Oh, my word, I have. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
let's see if we get this one. The artwork in the original books was basically teen boy porn, but hand drawn by like crayon licking kind of stylistic drawers, I guess. Basically, they traced over a lot of Marvel superheroes to get their results. Specifically to one unpowered Hasselhoff lookalike and one who now sounds like Small. Can you name them?
Oh, okay. Bloop, doobity bam, ba da 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 da.
Yes, Mark. Yes, Mark. Yes, Mark.
But this is his answer.
I'm gonna have to rush you for an
There will
answer.
be Doctor Strange as one of them.
Correct.
Oh,
And
Smaug, right.
The other one, what was the clue again?
David Hasselhoff lookalike, because he was in the film that came out of this character's name in the 80s.
Oh, right, okay. And Baywatch.
Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, okay.
It's based on David Hasselhoff.
He was
No.
he was probably the original Nick Fury.
He played Nick Fury in the 80s film, but the guys that whoever I don't know actually who's drawing it, but all of the artwork, a lot of the artwork is just them tracing over like Doctor Strange doing stuff and Nick Fury doing stuff in the
Oh,
Marvel
right, I
comic,
see.
and then slapping proper big beards on them or whatever and making them look like fighters and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, a fun fact: they had $100 art budget for the first books, and they paid $2 per small picture and $3 for a larger picture. So they got what they paid for.
Yeah, there are a lot of boobs involved.
Mhm.
There often are in these
Yeah,
things.
Nick
aren't
Fury was renowned for boobs.
He was. But yeah, it was all very kind of, like I say, teen boy porn. There was lots of anatomically impressive imagery
Oh,
going on.
right. You mean the kind of porn that teenage boys enjoy and have access to? Not okay. Good. That was very ambiguous for a minute there, and it was quite
Well, only
disturbing.
if that's your main method of thinking, but we'll move on to the next question. In White Box D&D, there were but 3 main character classes in the early days. Can you name all 3 of them in their correct terminology for 2 points each?
Strangers in the night.
Nope, that's
Would
incorrect.
it be fighter?
Nope.
Hmm.
Do you want to try and name the other 2?
Rogue
Nope.
and lawnmower.
No.
No.
But close. Lawnmower is probably the closest. Holly, would you like to take a stab in the dark at any of them?
It would be a wild stab in the dark.
Sure.
They're
Just
the
think
best.
D&D.
They're the best sorts.
Wizard.
Yeah, it's,
Human
yes, there is a
wizard.
There's also a fighter, but that's not the correct terminology for them.
Human wizard.
Yes, the only wizard you could play was human, but
Right, but that's not
Well,
what they
yeah.
were called. Right, gotcha.
one more. Oh, wait, the human one, the wizard guy you haven't got right. Do you have any idea of the other ones?
No.
Okay, so you had Fighting Man, was what they called the fighter. Their ability was basically they could use any of the weapons that were available. Then you had...
Don't tell us. The other 2 were Running Man and
A Burning Man.
Magic Man.
The other ones were Running Man and Arnold Schwarzenegger, actually. The other ones were Magic User, who couldn't fight for toffee crap, couldn't use armor, and were forced into the world with a spoon and a nappy. And they could only cast 1 spell a day. That was it.
I wonder how many people chose that as their class.
Well, if they survived, they became hard, like nails hard fireball machines, effectively, in the end. But you had to get through your levels first. And then you had clerics, who were sport characters that could do some fighting. They could only use blunt weapons, like maces, but not swords, which were the only magic weapons in the game. Clerics got fewer spells, and even magic users didn't even start with any at first level. Magic users got 1 whole spell, clerics got none. But they could do that whole Dracula thing and put their...
What, turn into bats?
Put that
Myth.
dangly thing in front of the vampire's faces to make them run off.
Oh no, that's Van Helsing.
Just turn undead.
You're thinking of Peter Cushing rather than Christopher Lee.
I am. You're right. Otherwise, they'd be turning into a bat and becoming dust. It'd be great. Great skills. Okay, here's one that Mark should get. Back in the day, you had to look up on a table to see what number you need to roll to hit any and each conceivable armor class based on your class. When they worked out this was confusing, they added a new and more confusing rule. What was it called?
Wait, say that again.
Sorry, say that again.
When you rolled to hit people, you had to work out every conceivable armor class and then the number you need to roll it. Then they introduced a slightly more confusing rule, which abbreviated everything down.
Is
You
that
remember that?
Thaco?
It was Thaco!
2-hit armor class 0.
And that's the bonus points. Look at that. Holly, you're only getting the bonus extra points when you get some wrong. It's not. And we had to give you a hint with the white box.
I know. I don't know much about D&D, but I still have thousands of points, so...
I do sense some small favoritism from the ref.
Never. In today's game, you
I think
can
it's
allocate
1,000
points when you create your character, and you roll 46, keep 1, and use many methods to create your character stats. In the white box, how do you think character creation took place?
Guesswork. Oh, sorry. Guesswork.
Incorrect. Holly, how do you think it took place?
You didn't get to choose, it was just all
Well, you kind of
Gen.
did, but you rolled 3d6, you took the result no matter what the fuck it was, and you allocated it to strength, and you did the same thing for dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma in that order.
Actually,
And then you
I do
went-
remember doing that.
Then you went,
It sucked. I wanted to play a fighter. You have 3 strength. You are not playing a fighter.
Which not only was awful, but your prime stat influenced how much XP you got. Say if you were a strong fighting man, you got a lot more XP than a weak fighting man. For intelligent magic user, you got a lot more XP than a slightly less intelligent magic user, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it was a stupid idea, but, whatever. I mean, you could... Constitution and stuff didn't give you, like, massive bonuses to your hit points either. Like, most you could ever get was a +1. So it was conceivable that you could start a character and only have 1 hit point, which meant that in the rules of D&D as they stood back then, a strong gust of wind could kill you.
Well, it depends where that strong gust of wind comes from and how fragile you're feeling.
Well, 1 hit point fragile is how I'm feeling at that point.
There you go, yeah.
Madness. Okay, can we name the 3 non-human races that you could start as?
Beep, beep, squiggle.
Okay, let's give it a go, Beans.
Okay. Dwarf.
Correct!
Excellent. I'm getting points for each one of these, right?
Yeah.
Good.
You don't get one right and Mark does. That's 1,000 points to Mark.
Oh, God. I should
Holly,
not. Beep,
fuck
beep,
it up,
squiggle.
fuck it up.
Elf.
Correct!
And I want to say halfling because you hate them.
You are correct. You have got the 6 points for guessing the correct races. Dwarves could only be fighting men and only get to level 6, but I had all that shit about secret doors and knowing what rock is. Granite.
It's called granite.
Sure. Elves, because Gygax was hot for them, I guess, could be fighting men or magic users and switch between the 2 leveling. They could also wear any armor, unlike magic users. They got to see secret doors, being means all paralysis. They were really hardcore, and halflings were turd. They could stagger to level 4 fighting men and manage to be a lot less magic resistant than dwarves, which is largely down to Gygax not liking Lord of the Rings, I guess. Bonus question: what did the Tolkien estate do in 1976?
Make them take halflings out, or they weren't allowed to call them hobbits.
Well, sort of. Do you know what it is, Mark?
Spell orcs differently?
Well, that as well. They issued a cease and desist to TSR to stop using all of the names that they'd stolen from the Lord of the Rings. Fucking now! Or we're going to destroy you. So they did. And they changed a lot of the stuff in their books to what we know and love now. Final question, which I'm only putting in here because it's remarkably weird. What was the maximum number of bad guys you could have in a fight as a ref, and how many players could you have in a single game of D&D? The answer to this is pretty wild.
Blankety blank, blankety blank, blankety blank. I'm going to say there were a maximum of 3 players.
Okay.
And a maximum of 6 opponents.
Mark is wildly off the mark. Holly, would you like to guess what the answer is?
Okay, wildly off the mark. The mark.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to say that the maximum number of people that you could have playing D&D was 15, and the number of opponents is like 72.
You were so close on people with the bit. The maximum number of bad guys that they would allow in a single encounter was 300, and they wrote rules for that. And the maximum number of players they encouraged around their table was 50.
Wow, you can really tell the tabletop roots of D&D in that decision, can't you?
Can you imagine that shit going on?
Can you imagine the scheduling conflict?
Yeah, initiative turns.
You'd never be able to like actually get everybody together because like Bob's got bowling and Susan's got to pick the kids up from school.
Can you imagine your bard trying to flirt with everyone?
Oh, disaster!
Right, let me pretend to add up these points. Right, real points. Mark got 3, 4,
Oh, excellent.
7, 8, 9, 13. Mark got 13 real points. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
Real points, Holly got... You didn't do too badly to me. It's 3 points to Greyhawk. And then the 6 points for the you got 9 real points.
9 real points. But how much have I won by?
Now, you also got your 2,000 bonus points.
Yeah.
Right. Which I was messing around about. But I was. I'm not going to give you. But that means you just get the points generally. Don't be silly. Just seeing how many actual points you got for those questions.
I can't
Which
believe
means
you
that
gave you 1,000 points and took them back, Holly. That's shit.
Well, actually, it means that you're both on 13 points at the end of the game.
Ooh, have you got a tiebreaker?
I don't have a tiebreaker, actually. I just said that if you draw, you draw at the start. I didn't think you would draw. That was like completely unlikely. Well, congratulations. You both win.
Thank you very much. I feel proud, honoured, and I'd like to thank my family. Yeah, that's it. Just my family, really.
It's
So
a
I think
moral
down the
victory
line-
for me because you took away 2,000 points.
I think
Luckily, you're not
underlines
bitter about it.
Oh, I am very.
how absolutely different D&D was when they first created it. I mean, can you imagine, honestly, sitting down with the concept of only 3 character classes and 4 species to play, and there being
remember it because I
50 of
did
you,
it.
50 of you around the table playing
No, I
that.
didn't do that.
You could have 50 people around a table, or like in one campaign, and all of them would be so vastly different from each other because of how much it's grown. That's just wow,
Yeah.
Sully.
But
Wow,
it pioneered
Sully.
its way into the world, and now we're celebrating its 40th anniversary at this Yuletide occasion. So with that absolute nonsense out of the way, and thanks for doing it, guys. It beats the arse out of just reading out facts.
Oh, I like a
It's up to
quiz.
beat us.
I'm just going to cover the cat's delicate young ears. It's not feeling.
But I hope you enjoyed it. It was a bit silly, but there we are. Let's talk about our experience with D&D. And I wanted to start with Mark because you were there, right near the beginning of it all. I mean, obviously, I don't. When you start playing it in 1970.
6, I think. 1976, which would have made me 14, pushing on 15 when I first found it. Again, probably about the perfect age, target age for the game. And I think I first came across it at school when somebody bought in a copy of it during
Was it the
lunch
white
break. I honestly can't remember that far back. It was a long time ago, and a lot of shit has happened in between now and then. So I wasn't paying attention to the cover of the box, but I was paying attention to the fact that, wow, this is really interesting. What, you mean you can play characters like Fafford and the Grey Mouser, or Elric, or Hobbit? You can play these characters, and you can affect the story, and that just fascinated me. And I was a bit like LARP. First time I encountered it, I was hooked.
Cool. Do you remember what you were reading at the time? Was there a book that married itself directly into the game for you?
No, but I'd been reading a lot of Michael Moorcock. I'd read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I was reading Fafford and the Grey Mouse. Probably a bit of Conan as well.
I mean, Gygax loved his Conan, didn't he?
Yeah. So it married in perfectly into a lot of the reading I was doing. I think I was probably mostly reading sword and sorcery fantasy books at that point, with a smattering of sci-fi and some horror. But yeah, mostly fantasy, and it was great. Yeah, opened up my eyes.
So what was your first game? Do you remember your first game? Do you remember your first character?
Oh, well, my first character is the first character I remember playing is currently my little name underneath my name on the screen. And
I realised I haven't done a name for myself.
no, well, my first character that I remember, but I'm sure it wasn't the first one I really played, was a druid called Silverleaf, and I ended up with a lion familiar. But that was probably at least a couple of years after I'd started playing at school. So I have no recollection of what characters I played at school. But I know that as soon as I got introduced to it, I went down our local games and model shop and got myself a copy of this, which is my first version of it. I think it's Games Workshop publication, and I think Games Workshop publication came in at 76 or 77 into this country.
Yeah, because I find this very amusing, but as I have it, and if I remember it correctly, Gygax came over to England, and the two, Livingston and
Jackson.
they were spotty oiks, I guess, and they were like, they had nothing, didn't have a shop, didn't have any premises, and they basically convinced Gygax that they could sell his books out of their stuff, and he was like, amazing English, but they out of nothing, they managed to sell his stuff. And they took chainmail and D&D and they turned it into Warhammer. And by the time he noticed they'd done it, they made enough changes to go like.
I thought, God, we can make a fortune off figures for this.
Yeah, which I think is glorious. But you're right. It's like one of the first things I remember about D&D was it was in White Dwarf. And then,
I think for me, I've got the White Dwarf because I was already playing D&D. I think that's the way around it was, because I remember I have the very first issue of White Dwarf by Games Workshop. This is when they actually published games by other people.
That's what I mean. I couldn't believe D&D was actually in White Dwarf when I first started.
Metamorphosis Alpha in this issue 1 was the one that I really want to play that. I never have done. I'm sure I've mentioned that on the previous podcast. So I'm pretty certain it would have been about 1976. Can't think it would have been 75. I'm not quite sure when Games Workshop bought D&D into this country or imported it.
I've looked that up.
No, I tried to look it up, but it was kind of a bit vague. But I think it was, they were saying 1976, 77. But that's certainly when this issue of White Dwarf is June, July 1977. Price 50p. So I was already playing D&D when I bought that. And another thing that I have, but knowing that we were going to do this episode, I had to dig through my memorabilia here, and I have. Sorry, this is a very visual thing I'm going to be showing, so apologies to listeners. You're just going to have to go and watch our videos if you want to see. This was one of my original dungeon maps, all on little fine graph paper. I've got the actual handwritten adventure here as well. So God knows when this was. It was probably about 1977, 78, I suppose, maybe. And then Games Workshop hex paper for your outdoor maps. And this is published 1978 Games Workshop, that is. So I was well into it by that point. And then this, I believe, was from the first boxed set that I got. So I had all these.
So the reader's benefit there, Mark, is this is benefit. Mark is putting out many graphics of paper with some of them with his own hand drawn, as you would expect.
Yes.
Artistically illustrated map. They look very beautiful.
And then an entire school notebook, which was probably meant to be used for maths or something, but because it had nice graph paper in it, was perfect for writing adventures for D&D. So I was hooked on it. It was just, and the thing was, you couldn't really get miniatures for the game at that point, so you had to make do with lead figures from other things, from tabletop wargaming.
That's weird, though, isn't it? Considering they came from like a miniature wargaming based background.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it was so early that the market hadn't kind of built up enough for miniature producers to go, ooh, we need to make specific ones. But it was minifigs were the first range that I was aware of, which had things like halflings, frog folk, things which were specifically for fantasy tabletop role playing. Unfortunately, I had loads of these and I gave them away. I gave them away in the 90s, and I wish I hadn't, but there you go, they're all gone. But yes, I remember really excited to finally, like, oh, look, figures for this game, rather than having to make do with a hussar or something, paint them green.
So this is the Bullywug. No, he's French, isn't he?
Yeah. So, yeah, it was very, very, very early days that I started.
You got any questions there, Beans?
Not really. It's a very it's something that, because I didn't get into D&D until much later in
what year?
my life.
What year did you get in?
It post.
In the last 5 years, isn't it?
No. 2015, 2016. So in the last 8 years, I'd say.
That's very recently then.
Yeah.
That's why Harley will go last on how what your experiences of these things. We can kind of talk through the generations of game. Because one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, to jump to the end of, is how, obviously you did the first edition probably a lot more than you've done 5th edition. Did you do anything in between?
Me? No, yeah. I kind of stopped at AD&D.
How'd you find the difference between? I know you've done 5th ed with me, so how'd you find the differences in the?
I mean, I've played it with you. I've also listened to a lot of podcasts, real play podcasts, and some of those use D&D rather than Pathfinder. Most of them seem to be using Pathfinder nowadays, but some of them were using sort of 5th edition, and I don't know. It just seemed to be overly complicated. Overcomplicated.
Which one? The first one or the new ones?
I think a lot of the subsequent ones, because they're trying to give rules for every eventuality. Well, that's what it felt like. That there were rules for this and there were rules for that and rules for that. AD&D was kind of open, and I mean, the way I play it, if I'm DMing, a lot of it is just based on intuition and these basic charts you've got. And go, okay, what's sensible in this situation? Okay, roll a dice for that, and yeah, do that. So I think the more you had to look up, because somewhere out there's a rule for this. I think unless you know the system off the back of your hand, then it slows the gameplay up. And I think I'm not a fan of that. If somebody else knows all the rules, I'm happy to play along. Go, what do I do now? Am somebody go, oh, you can do this now. Fine, let them babysit me. But to be expected to learn all of those rules, and I listened to podcasts of real play. I say again, mostly Pathfinder, but things like Glass Cannon. They have players and the ref on there. They're just fonts of knowledge. Oh yeah, I know this. There's one player, Skid Mar, and he just knows it all. And he just go, oh yeah, to do this and that, and do that and that and that. And just go, how the fuck do you remember?
Yeah, they're vital to a game. I mean, that's the best way to run as a ref. You just kind of write your story, and then I do this so much. We were there when I was at D&D, go like, and I want you to check for looky looks, and someone will go like, oh, you need to do this, that, and that. You asking us to see if we can see someone? I am. Oh, this is how that works. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but you don't like dice when you DM, do you? And I fucking love dice.
It depends
dice are what I live for. Dice and figures and maps.
Depends what I'm doing. It depends what kind of story I'm trying to tell. I mean, like when we do Call of Cthulhu, I really like the mechanics for Cthulhu, so I'm quite happy to roll dice in it. I like it's kind of similar to the way that D&D now have picked up that whole like you've got the advantage sort of mechanic where you're rolling 2 dice, picking the best result.
Yeah, there's a lot of little bits and pieces like that I've kind of incorporated into how I DM. The rolling for advantage and little sensible bits and pieces that you go, oh, that's a nice idea, I'll bring that in.
Yeah.
But it's very much it's more about the flow of the game, and just if something happens in the game and people go, oh, how are we going to resolve this? It's generally it's a bit like this, so roll a dice a bit like that. Just try and make it fair. I just try and make the whole process fair, intuitive, and not leaden bound in pages and pages and pages of graphs and charts and rules and descriptions.
I found that to be very much like it was with like second ed D&D. But let me ask you, when you did your D&D for how long do you reckon you did D&D for before you kind of got into LARPing?
No, well, I got into LARPing in 1982.
So 6-7 years.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't do a lot of it through college because I did the school, and then I had a year of foundation course after I did my sixth form, and then I went off to Nottingham to do a 3-year degree course. And in the degree course, I couldn't find anybody who played D&D. I did find one tabletop group, and we played. I joined them for one afternoon of Traveller, and I remember I accidentally blew off the ship's airlock and almost killed most of the crew, and they didn't invite me back again. So I didn't really get to do much, but I found LARP because I went to, it was the Asgard Miniatures shop in Nottingham, which is where I went to college. And I went in there to have a browse around, maybe buy some figures, maybe a few dice, whatever. Even though I wasn't playing actively within a game, I was still like, I want to see what's on the market. I want to see what's out there and keep abreast of things. And that's when I found the Flyer to Treasure Trap, which was the UK's first official tabletop live action role play. And because of my love of Dungeons and Dragons, I thought, wow, this is brilliant. So we've gone from reading a book or watching a film to being in a game where you can influence that story and be part of it. And now we've moved on from the tabletop, and you can actually live that yourself and go into a castle and meet all these creatures that you've only met on the tabletop. And that was my flow chart of getting into LARP.
How much of D&D did you take into your own writings for LARP, do you think? How much did it influence what you were doing?
In the early days, a lot. It was basically, as I think most people will agree, that the original Treasure Trap rules were as practical a port as you could do from D&D. Yeah, all the character classes were there. You had... Sorry?
All three of them.
All three
Fighting
of them,
man!
Yeah. You had battle boarding with locations, which I think was more akin to... Was it Swords and Chivalry? What
no
was
idea.
It was a post D&D game, but rather than just block hit points, it had hit points per location, and different armor class per location, and they ported that into Treasure Trap and into the live role playing rules. And any of us who really took our experience of Treasure Trap and went on to try and do our own systems, we were heavily influenced at the beginning by what Treasure Trap had achieved, and we didn't really know better. It seemed the logical way of doing things, but obviously as things evolved, it pulls further and further away from Dungeons and Dragons, which was its original inspiration. So early myth lore was pretty much a port of Treasure Trap rules, and only after we'd been playing it for a while, new ideas came up, new ways of doing things came up, and we evolved.
As well, you get like the whole in LARPing, you can't get away from. I suppose in the early days, but if you went to Labyrinth, for example, you're always dungeoneering, and you're always that whole concept of actually dungeons. They were a big part of what LARPing kind of spoke about to the world.
And everybody, Treasure Trap had a castle, and that castle had dungeons, and it had towers, and it had battlements, and it had a castle.
And holes you could fall into.
Sorry?
And holes you could fall into.
Oh yeah, those, and balconies you could jump off and whatever. But that was a pretty damn close port to a dungeon crawl at points. That the Treasure Trap basic was basically a dungeon crawl. There was maybe 5-6 rooms, and it was a mini dungeon crawl. And I've always, if if you look at the maps and the games that I used to do, most of them were dungeon crawls because that fitted nicely on a graph paper. Yeah.
I understand.
So they're easy to draw. I mean, I don't know whether you ever remember the whole process of the dungeon master describing to the players the map that they were drawing, because the players would draw their own map as they progressed. So you go, okay, 2 squares north, and then there's a T junction, and then if you go west, it's 3 squares, and there's a door on the east, and then if you go the other direction, then there's a turning 5 squares up which goes north, and that's literally the way you were describing it to the players who were studiously marking that out on their graph paper. And there was something quite magical about that. But as that whole evolution thing goes, I really got into creating my own maps, creating my own floor tiles, using figures.
It does seem like a long time ago that you had a mapper, because they were roles, weren't they? You know, you had like somebody would be your party leader and they would speak for you. I guess I'm talking to Beans here, and that was kind of encouraged in the rule books. Somebody would be a mapper, and that meant they were in charge of mapping everything.
That is a lot of responsibility. No, thank you.
Well, you're a note taker, aren't you? Sure.
Yeah. When we do Cthulhu, I write about 17 pages of notes per game.
True that.
Yeah, I'm not exaggerating in the slightest. Everything that happens, including some choice quotes, it all just goes in the book.
Yeah, I mean, like, and all of these roles were things that were encouraging. Mark's really right, because as a ref, particularly watching people map out your dungeon was kind of cool. And if they weren't doing it, you got kind of pissed off with them. Why do you do the map? I've mapped the map. You draw the map, and you're like, get on with it.
No, you can tell us where to go. Or when they map it wrong, yeah, and they go, well, this. Hang on, there's not a space here. How can a room be fitting in there? Methinks maybe somebody hath fucked up.
Get your rubber out. I've done it in pen. What are you doing pen for?
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be doing that, do you?
Yeah. Okay. That's probably about all we've got time for today. We've done well over our normal time.
My nostalgia is strong. No, it's quite nice to reminisce about the old days of D&D.
Well, I'm sure we'll get on to some more next week, because whilst this may be the end for tonight, I mean, Holly didn't get to say much at the end there, so hopefully we can pick Holly's brains about the excitement of how they learned to roleplay in the world of D&D, what it inspired, what we moved on to, because I'd like to talk a little bit more about the games that we moved on to. I certainly find that D&D was where I began, and my style of storytelling that all grew out of there and into other areas, and I'm sure it was the same for all of us. So we will be back. Holly, you want to say anything?
Well, I mean, I was just going to say I've got some reasonably, I think, controversial opinions on that, because I don't actually think D&D is as good as Cthulhu or Pendragon. Just overall,
do you
its
think
existence.
I think D&D is as good as Cthulhu or Pendragon?
No, I don't. I don't at all. But
No,
then again, like a lot of the way that I write and tell stories, and a lot of the way that I run games, I learned through LARP, because I did LARP before I did tabletop. So I think a lot of that comes from ROC, so a lot of it comes from you. So we're bound to share some opinions.
So I'll end on this note then. In 1974, Gary Gygax was turned down, as I said earlier, by the guys that he was working with at the time, and he had to form TSR to sell Dungeons and Dragons, right? A lot of the motivating factor for that was because he firmly believed that if he didn't do it right now, somebody else would very, very soon come to the conclusion, like I said, that a bunch of sweaty nerds wanted to sit around the room and roll dice, right? And he's right, because
yes, we do.
D&D is first only because Call of Cthulhu is the second longest running published reprinted game going, right? But he got there first, and if it wasn't for Dungeons and Dragons, there wouldn't be. We might not be as far along the trail as we are now. LARP might not have happened. If it had been Cthulhu first, we might not be LARPing in the same way, but we are. This is where we are, and if we hadn't had it, if I hadn't been sitting around, at school playing D&D with a bunch of people I certainly wouldn't have got onto a Cthulhu as quickly.
No.
I wouldn't have gone to Gen Con. I wouldn't have found loads of other games. So, give it its due.
Oh, 100%.
And
Absolutely.
it spawned one fantastic film. Just the one.
Oh, Hugh Grant, toppers.
Yes, it did. It's an excellent
Yeah.
film. So,
Love it.
on that note, we will now leave the pod and we will return to our ramblings about D&D later in the month. But for the moment, we hope that you are enjoying our advent calendar that we are slowly rolling out into the world and what nonsense that is. And look forward to seeing more of it. We'll be doing the 12 Days of Christmas soon, which involves singing and some guests. We're almost there of our numbers, and we'll start recording that in about a week's time, hopefully. And hopefully we're going to be doing some Christmas presents at some point, but we'll come to that later, I think. So, we hope you're enjoying the festive periods and these pods, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. So it's goodbye from me.
Beep, beep, squiggle. It's goodbye from me.
Strangers in the night. And for me, good night.
The power of the nonsense goodbye. Much love, everyone. Take care. You have been listening to A Geek Tragedy with me, Plague Mantle, and my best friend, the excellent Holly Properly, and our actually famous guy, Mark Caldery. If you like this, there is plenty more at patreon.com/A Geek Tragedy. Production is by Kit Bretnell. Our logo and artwork is by markcaldery.com. Music is by Boleslaw Kozielski. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Geek Tragedy. Email us at ageektragedypodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe, leave us a rating and a review. And don't forget to tell all your geeky friends. Also, a big shout out to all of our genius geeks. We adore each and every one of you. And of course, much love. Take care of each other.